Hello, you're welcome to News Magazine with me, Irbad Ibrahim, and today is World Pneumonia Day. Are you suffering from pneumonia? Do you have a relative who suffers from pneumonia? We wish you the very best and we wish you a speedy recovery. And today we are going to look at the economy of education as part of our discussion of content and strategies that are used at the basic level. And today we'll speak to a very renowned economist, Dr. Emmanuel Ashley. He's also a columnist with a number of the newspapers in the Republic of Ghana. He's widely published, and so therefore we'll have a good time today. But before then, we take trending news with Abena Safo. Abena, what do you have for us by way of trending news?
Public procurement law.
You see, before the taxpayers' money is used to carry out any form of a project, it has to pass through a procurement process. And thank God we now have a minister in charge of procurement, and she's in the person of Honorable Safo. So therefore, for so long, people were using arbitrary means to disperse public funds, so they could do sole sourcing. Someone could sit somewhere and ask somebody to open a new company, and then that project would be outsourced to that person with no track record of any expertise in that area whatsoever. So that is costing the taxpayer a lot of money, and that is why the vision we have as a country to put a whole minister, a state minister, in charge of procurement. And I believe with time we'll be able to clean up the mess in that area that is costing the taxpayer millions of Ghana cedis.
Okay. Next one. The next one says, build consensus to address challenges, Information Minister tells student leader. That's from Joy Online.
Working as peace ambassador for the election in 2016, I worked with so many stakeholders, and because university students fall within the youth bracket, I worked with them at all levels. I traveled across the country talking to them at universities and all that. But I noticed one thing. Right at the university level, there are two key political groups.
Okay.
We have TESCON for the NPP and TANE for the NDC. So there is no consensus on any issue, because maybe the SRC president is a member of TANE and his vice president is a member of TESCON. Okay. And depending on which party is in power at that opportune time, you can decide to sabotage student projects. The NUGS, National Union of Ghana Students, there were elections I was actually called to, then there would be parallel elections taking place somewhere else. Complete pandemonium on the student front. We are told during the time of Dr. Nkrumah, anytime there was any public policy, they waited to hear what the students of Legon would say. Okay. That was how much weight student unions had at the time. But because they've allowed such political fissures, because of the advent of TANE and TESCON, unfortunately, they have a divided front. So the Information Minister is telling them they can build consensus despite the challenges they have with partisanship at the student level.
Yeah, but do you think that should be the case? Because I think building consensus with authorities or school leaders, among school leaders themselves would do the students a great...
Go to Oxford, go to Cambridge. If you are the union president, you are accorded, so much respect.
Due respect, yeah.
Yes, but unfortunately, all you hear is that, okay, student leaders are allowed to sit through meetings. Yeah. But how do they report back to the students they represent? There have been reports that sometimes student leaders are in cahoots with school authorities, burdening students with extraneous charges, fees, pay for this, pay for that, because they're able to feed on the scramble that comes as a result of that. So therefore, it's a very good call by the Honorable Minister for Information. He's youthful, he's young, and I believe such a call will resonate with student leaders across the country.
Definitely, and so student leaders can also have a say. It wouldn't be like they were seated and then spoon-fed, and then they would have to go and then also spoon-feed their colleagues.
And the university is the biggest, avenue for intellectuals, people studying anything between archaeology and zoology.
Okay.
So anytime there is a public issue, we would want to hear from the student front rather than being divided all the time. A house that is divided onto itself cannot stand.
I know. Well, that's a good move, though. And then the next one says, Ghana has no strong institutions to fight electoral crisis. Prosper Bani, that's from
Prosper Bani served in various capacities in government.
Okay.
He was interior minister at some point and then chief of staff at another point. So electoral crisis, well, I don't agree with him. Because if you look at electoral crisis, it depends upon how you view it.
Okay.
In election 2016, on election day, we declared Operation Zero Casualty. There wasn't a single casualty on election day.
Okay.
And there was a crisis of delay in the declaration of the results because the EC said its servers were compromised. But eventually, peace prevailed, and there was the handover of the baton from one party to another. So therefore, Ghana is not doing badly at all. We have structures in place like the National Peace Council. Otumfuo Osei-Tutu brings together, flag bearers every election, at least in the past few elections, to make a commitment to peace and all that. So therefore, I believe Ghana will always, weather the storm. In terms of the political, milestones, we are able to chalk every now and then. 2020 is going to be interesting, but just like 2016, I believe it's going to be very peaceful.
But I agree with him to some extent because it's not completely what we're expecting to have elections when during elections time, because everything is not as structured as everyone is looking out for, because we've also got our shortfalls. So I don't agree totally with you that we don't have crisis.
I agree with you. There will even be more turbulence now that every party will come with its own electoral commissioner.
Yeah.
Mind you, and Jean Mensa is now the electoral commissioner. Maybe if another party comes to power, it's going to show her the exit and bring its own electoral commissioner. So it destabilizes the electoral process. To that end, I agree with you. So there is a little instability within the political process, but that doesn't, get to the level of an electoral crisis.
Definitely. Then I agree with you with that one. Anyway, the next one says, the racist phase of the Chinese presence in Africa.
No, Chinese people are cool.
Are they?
Yes, Chinese people are just like all other people.
Okay.
We have differences in language and color.
Okay.
But then I think when you do business, you don't think of race.
Oh, okay.
So therefore, I don't think the one who penned this particular editorial or op-ed was really frank and honest with us. And Chinese people are cool. Arabs, Caucasians, Russians. We do business with them in Ghana. So therefore, I don't think it is too important to accentuate racism when we are talking commerce. You do business and then you bid each other farewell. So it has nothing to do with your race whatsoever.
Okay, that one is actually from the international news portal, that's DW.com. And then moving further, more classrooms, dormitories from 1.5 billion Get Found facilitates.
Ghana Education Trust Fund is one of the most oiled and resourced institutions we have. And anytime you want to do your master's abroad, you can actually write to Get Fund.
Okay.
For those that are watching us, you have your first degree, maybe after your national service, you've worked for 2 or 3 years, you think you are going rusty and you want to upgrade. You can always apply online, get yourself a university, then write to Get Fund. So 1.5 billion goes into so many things: infrastructure, sponsoring scholarships abroad for Ghanaian students and all that. So therefore, it's a very important, institution, and we need to keep supporting it. And whatever budgetary allocation that is made to the Education Ministry, it has its own slice of the cake.
Okay. That particular piece is from City News. Anyway, that's where we leave it for our trending news for today. Everybody and the guests has got a lot to talk about, and I know you would enjoy it. You're still watching News Magazine on Kantanka TV. I will be back with comments. Thank you.
Okay, that is Abnasa for she'll sure be back to read your WhatsApp messages. Do stick and stay with us. When we come back, we sit with Dr. Emmanuel Ashley. You can't afford to miss it.
Do you want to enroll your ward in a school where quality basic education, discipline and moral upbringing is our hallmark? Then come to Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences Basic School. Great Asas, Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences has vacancies in preschool, lower and upper primary, JHS 1 and JHS 2 with spacious and ventilated classrooms. The school also has excellent boarding facilities for students from upper primary to JHS. Great Asas also has a well-stocked library, a school bus that picks your ward from home to school and back home with adequate security measures to ensure your ward's safety. Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences Preschool has state-of-the-art learning materials to make learning fun for your ward. We also have the Cadet Corps and a cultural troupe to tap hidden talents in your ward. Locate Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences at Awoshi Last Stop, Accra. Great Asa!
Hello, lovely people of Africa, African Youth Time. This is the show, as I rightly said, that gives African youth the platform to have an up-close with living legends who are helping build the continent.
The youth of Africa, they have a lot of potential.
What is killing Africans is our inability to discover and identify our potentials and what we can do for ourselves.
Nobody makes you a leader. You become a leader.
We are not poor. The resources in Congo alone can feed the whole Africa.
Onipa how ene ne da chinti ena abribia wo sori prayer hwehwe na hoto ahoto ne nso ema prekope enkukuhwe ase ene wo how bebre ene wo mu wenti ena Kantanka TV ya hwehwe dwumadie foforo kra ya to din se edwasonsam wodwasonsam dwumadie so ye baba kuna adwadifo ne abusa wo mo how ene wo mama ne wo mo efa mu na empo se edaw bitai akira a wode pre ahwehwe won da achen ahoto eno ti hia wo bia ba ama adwobi e wo Kantanka TV ne afa edwasonsam emfa mbro.
Abodie mu no wonim say onyankopon ewo adoma odedo moman bia saa achede niema eboa manipa nya hoto ewo ne dada asetenam ensio emframa ye duane ye nia kwaye enhahama ani nro ahodo empo ya mamre ene ya mane saa niema niema nyankopon de moman bia se de mbeba emunipa no enya ahoto enti na Kantanka television ahihye dwumadie so nkwa ya to ne din se yediem wo yediem dwumadie so no na ye kɔ Ghana me nyina me akwa akɔfa niema ahodo a onyankopɔn ade adom ye ene mfaso a ye nya no wo so sanso ne yebɛhwɛ ahobambo so nkwa de bɛba saa niema yi yetimi ahwɛso ye ade agya hɔ ade ama ntirima sɛ me kan yediem a no agye sɛ papapa yediem papapa
made in Ghana ya yediem Ome yenywanje yenyama
o made in Ghana
ya yediem made in Ghana.
You're welcome back. Today we have a very important guest, but before then, I would want to give a big shout out to a group of people, young ladies who are helping behind the scenes. They are the unsung heroes to bring you this important show. It's a solid team with proper division of labor. I would want to say a big shout out, send a big shout out to Ifua Foriwa. For your efforts are appreciated. Then Esther Safo. Then we have Naomi Fosua, Abigail Mensah, who helps Broda with sound. We have Ifia Chumwa and also Ekuya. Ekuya is a fashionista. She's a beautician and she's the CEO of Beautycom. So young ladies, your efforts are much appreciated. You can keep your WhatsApp messages coming on 0242-817-239, and in due course, you'll have the opportunity to call into the show. We have in the studios Dr. Ebenezer Ashley. Doc,
yes.
Thank you so much for making time.
Thanks for having me.
Doc, people keep wondering how much it costs the nation to educate our young ones, especially at the basic level from class 1 to class 6. Can you give us a sense of the numbers?
Thank you very much. First, I will say good morning to our cherished viewers. The idea of education, especially at the basic level, has been with us since time immemorial. But there was a new twist to it under the administration of former President Jerry John Rawlings, when the idea of free, compulsory, universal basic education, which was christened as F-Cube, came into being, which actually made it somewhat compulsory for every child to attain the basic form of education, which was even extended beyond the primary to the now the JHS level. So if you look at the situation, initially the cost was not too high. Why? Simply because the idea of education did not beat downward with some parents, and therefore they were staying their wards away from the classroom. With constant education, you realize the numbers have increased, and therefore the number of people that show up in schools, including the physical classrooms we have and those that have to make do with the shelter that they have under the trees, you realize the numbers have increased considerably. Now, if you're looking at the cost, then the cost will be a combination of costs or factors here. We're looking at the number of children that attend the school, the facilities that the government will have to provide, the number of teachers that would have to be employed, the salaries that the government will have to pay on a monthly basis to these teachers, the chalk and then the chalkboards that will have to be provided, the electricity facilities, the water, and what have you. So you realize that is it. You know, so if you're looking at it from this angle, you realize we have quite a chunk of money going into our education system, and therefore from this particular angle, when an amount is mentioned and you consider the fact that the government's initiative is not profit oriented, but it is social provision focused, will tell you that there will be more money going into it than one would imagine. When you talk about not being profit-oriented, but social provision focused, what it basically means is that in areas where the private person will not set up a school, because the cost-benefit analysis will not go in favor of this person, the government will still be compelled to put up a school, because you need to make sure that the people within the smaller community, in the small village, still have access to education for the future. You know, so on the basis of this, the government takes up the responsibility of providing even learning facilities in areas that the private investor will not be interested in venturing. You know, so on the basis of this, the amount of money is very high. Here we're talking about millions of cedis here. I would not like to mention one particular figure, but if you even look at the fact that the number of students or pupils that turn out from the JHS level into the secondary school, we have a backdrop of over 187,000 that the government had to come with a makeshift system to accommodate them and to provide the facilities for these people alone, and then look at the cost of maintaining teachers to commensurate with the number of people. We're talking about 1.2 billion Ghana cedis to meet that particular needs alone. So the cost of funding our basic education, it is not on a low side, but the cost is worth incurring. You know, it is highly worth incurring, and we're even going to talk more about this based on some of the follow-up questions. So if you look at, if you consider the fact that we have to, as a nation, provide for the learning needs of the people in the nooks and crannies of the country, then the quantum of money that will go into it is even not being met. If you as we sit here, you realize the government is still trying to put up structures in areas that have no access. I was watching a documentary on one of the television stations the other time, and as recent as 2018, there are people still boarding canoes to cross over, to another village to attend school. And it tells you the task we have still on hand to make sure that people avoid risk and be able to access education within their catchment area. So the cost we've already incurred, if we should hear, shouldn't baffle us. It is even not enough, because we still need to invest more in the area of education. The foundation is very paramount. If we do not set the basics and the basis right, our middle and upper development will just be a mere formality. It will be an exercise in futility. It wouldn't be an exercise in economic fruition. So the amount of money we spend in the basic education at the basic level should even be more than it is. And you realize steps are still, plans are still underway to develop it. So as we speak, we have millions of Ghana citizens going into our basic education. And what I'm talking about, when I say millions, I'm not even talking about years. I'm talking about years. If you even look at the types of facilities I've mentioned, and you want to make sure you access every part of the country, then you can just imagine. Ghana is relatively not a huge country geographically. We occupy about 22.9 million square hectares of land on the African continent, and yet we still have estimated about 29.6 million people. So you can just imagine. And therefore, we still have some task on hand. So amount of money going into it is quite colossal, but I wouldn't stick my neck out with a definite amount.
Okay, Doc,
Yes.
that is quite an impressive preamble.
Yeah.
And of course, the purpose of this show is not to scratch the problems on the
Yes.
surface. We dig deeper, and then we exhaust all the issues and
Yeah.
make propositions for the state to put things right.
Very good.
But in Scandinavian countries, education is free. Basic
Yes.
education is free.
Yes.
So is it a matter of the quantum of your GDP? It has to do with a long-term policy decision as a country that we can weather the storm and make education free and accessible at the basic level?
Very good question. It's even not only the Scandinavian countries. You go to the advanced economy like the United States, basic education is free.
Basic education in the
Yes,
US is free.
up to the senior high school level is free. Unless you decide to enroll your child in perhaps the private institution, that is where it will come at somewhat cost. And even at the university level, if your parents' income, is not enough, you still get the chance to access university education at the expense of the state and not yourself. So technically, even education up to university level is free, technically, even in advanced economies like the United States. But up to the high school level, that is what it is. And therefore, even if you have to make some contribution, that will just be a little amount. But the general condition is that people have to access education so that in the end, the nation can boast at least of people with the basic form of knowledge. And when it is time to disseminate certain key socio-economic information, the government will not find herself wanting, because you lay the basic foundation.
So is it, the US has a big GDP.
Yes.
It dwarfs our GDP. We will literally sink multiple times in head GDP as a country. So is our economy expansive enough to say basic education is free in every sense of the word?
Yeah, a very good one. So that's what I'm heading to. It is. The question begs for a close-ended response, but I would expand it. Yes, it is. I'm just drawing analogy to the fact that not only the Scandinavian, even the advanced economies, that you could say capitalist-oriented, and therefore it may be a matter of contribute, still has in mind that you need to set the grounds for the individual to be able to buy into the capitalist idea. If you have the basics, the foundation in terms of academic, then you'll be able to strive for the wealth that you're looking for. But if you do not have the foundation, then it may be difficult for you to appreciate the concept that is being sold out to you and be able to even fit into it, let alone thrive in it. So education is even free in capitalist-driven economies like the United States. Now, having said this, if you come to ours, you realize even when we did not have much discovery in terms of natural resource, we thought it necessary as a nation to provide basic education at no cost to parents. Why would this change?
So before oil, COCOBOD. So COCOBOD, do we pump some of COCOBOD money into basic education?
So you look at it, yes, it goes. And to the extent that COCOBOD even provides scholarship. And to the extent that even non-cocoa farmers have their awards even benefiting from COCOBOD scholarship. Okay. You know, so this speaks volume of how we could go. Now, it is not only a matter of one source of funding. It is a matter of national commitment to a particular cause. That is what it is. Once again, it is not a matter of one source of funding for the education, but it's a matter of national commitment to a particular cause and looking at the long-term economic benefits that you derive from such an investment. That is what informs the decision eventually, you know. And fortunately for us, you know, whenever as a nation we decide to embark on a particular social economic journey, and it is worthwhile, the good Lord prevails with some discovery. You know, we can't rule out this possibility. You realize in 2011, we started lifting crude oil in commercial quantities. To some extent, it is intended to also make certain development journeys easy for us as a nation. And therefore, if you are provided, you should be in a position to also extend it to the citizenry. That is where we find ourselves now. So even if we set the likes of the United States aside, you realize within Ghana, we have the resources to be able to provide the education at no cost to parents, to ensure that in the near future we would be able to derive the professional dividends that come with providing sound education for the people of the country. And that is where we are as a nation. And you said I don't want to mention it, but you look at the fact that the old man, the president, is so convinced that this is something that is highly achievable, not only doable, but achievable. You know, and therefore we've come to a stage where we shouldn't dwell so much on the cost, you know, but look at how to make it successful, because the end result will outweigh the amount of money that would invest in it. The immediate examples, we will not go even to the advanced economies, are the Malaysia and Singapore, who set off with us on the same time, you know, at the same time with regards to our independent journey. But here's the case, they have outtaken us. They even had to tap into the implementation policies of the first president of this country to provide free education for their people, to make sure that no parent will hold excuse that I did not have money. And that is why I did not allow my ward to attain the formal form of education that you are introducing to us. No excuse. The education has been provided as we speak. You go to the likes of Malaysia, and their natural resources have been depleted, and what they have is just about 30 to 40%. It means 70 to 60% is gone. But people,
all of that has gone into human capital.
That is it. The people are not complaining because they know the leaders invested this in them. And therefore, the current generation and subsequent ones are thinking about how to even turn the remaining 40 to 30% into 1,000 and multiple percentages. And that is what we have to do. So it's not about the cost. It's about the commitment to provide the necessary foundation for posterity. So when you are not there and someone else should take over, you will be able to heave a sigh of sound socioeconomic relief, because you know whoever is taking up the mantle from you has the wherewithal to continue and even do better than you have had the opportunity to do. So the investment in itself is not something we should draw so much, but think about how to provide for, because we have model cases of how people have invested so much in education and they are reaping the benefits today. You go to Malaysia, the government does not have to educate people on how to engage in backyard garden, like we had to last year rekindle the spirit of the early 70s under the late Ignatius Kutu Acheampong. Yes, you know, the Operation Feed Yourself had to be rekindled as we have it growing for
planting for
food and jobs. You know, that is what has been rekindled, and the campaign had to go on. When you relax sometimes, then the people also, you know, renege on their responsibility to continue with the task. You go to Malaysia, people grow crops on their rooftops without the government intervention. They put soil on top of their roof, and that's where they have their garden, because they are surrounded by the sea, limited land space, and they're making use of the available...
All because the government expended the natural resources on education.
Exactly.
Okay, Doc, on this interesting note, we go for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'll ask Doc, if we pump this much into education, why do we still have basic schools under trees? Do stick and stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
School that has keen interest in academic excellence and sound religious upbringing, then Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences is the place. Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences, Great Assas, offers general arts, business, home economics, visual arts, general science and technical courses in auto mechanics and applied electricity. Great Assas has well-equipped laboratories for all the science-related courses, an ICT laboratory, and a well-stocked library. Excellent boarding facilities are available for both boys and girls with adequate security measures to ensure your ward's safety. Students also have the privilege to go to Apostle Safo Suaye at Gomu Ampota for practical lessons with the proprietor, Apostle Dr. Engineer Kwedo Safo, for 1 month during the long vacation. We also have a school bus that picks your ward from home to school and back home. Great Assas has a cadet corps, a choir, drama and debating club to harness the hidden talents in your ward. Locate Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences at Awoshila Stop, Accra, Ghana. Great Assas.
Onipa how ene ne da achenti ena abribia wo sori prayer hwehwe na ahoto ne nso ema prekope en kukuhwe ase ene wo how bebre ene wo mu wenti ena Kantanka TV ya hwehwe dwumadie foforo kra ya to dey say edwaso nsem wo dwaso nsem dwumadie so ye baba apne adwadefo ne abusa wo mo how ene wo mama ne wo mo efa mu na empo se edaw bitai akira a wo de pre ahwehwe won da achen ahoto eno ti hia wo bia ba ama adwobi e wo Kantanka TV ne afa edwaso nsem emfa mbro.
You're welcome back. We are still in the studios with Dr. Ebenezer Ashley. He's an economist and a financial analyst. And today we are looking at the cost of basic education. And Doc, you've talked profusely about the regime that surrounds basic education in other countries like Malaysia and Singapore. And let's come back home. And we will soon review a few of the books we have. But can you take us through the very rationale? Because some are saying if it will cost us this much, why don't we go back to the O and A levels? Why don't we go back to the old system? And so what explanation can you give in that regard?
Thank you very much. You look at the fact that what was the rationale for the introduction of the basic education. Actually, it was not intended to replace the old education system. It was intended to improve on the technical form of education we have in the country. You realize in time past, most of our technical graduates were good in the calculation subject, like mathematics, you know, and the practical aspect. But when it comes to expression in the main national language, you know, it was somewhat of a challenge. And so the need was to ensure that there was an improvement, not only in the quantitative aspect of training when it comes to technical education, but the qualitative aspect is also improved on. You know, so it was intended to add some amount of coloration to our technical form of education.
So still on basic education, Doc, I'll be leading the discussion because there are specific areas I would be very glad you tackle.
Very good.
So when you talk about technicality, vocationalism and all that, between classes 1 and 6, what are the things you would want to say? I have in my hand a few boxes of how they are taught. So look at the numbers, the number of subjects you think are okay, the content as well. And so if we wanted to veer off the old system and pump some technicality into the education sector, at the basic level, what are some of the things you would want to say?
Well, the basic should still remain the same across board. But then if you look at the number of subjects that the children are introduced to at the primary level, you realize it's quite on the high side.
Okay.
Yes,
so
if you look at kindergarten, reviewed quite a number of them. Realize kindergarten in some schools, the 3-4-year-old will be introduced to about 7 subjects in the 2-year period. Before moving to perhaps class 1. And the lower primary, which is class 1 to 3, you'll be introduced to about 14 subjects.
Up to 14?
Yes, you know, I don't want to mention the school here. Perhaps I'll be marketing the school.
So that's too much for the kids.
As a matter of fact. And then you also look at the upper primary. That's from class 4 to 6. You have about 17 of these subjects.
Wow.
Now, if you move to the JHS, that is where the number is reduced to 12 in most of the schools. You have 12, and then you sit for the basic education certificate examination in 8 or 9, depending on the facilities and the availability of teachers in that particular school.
So where are the extraneous additional 4 or 5 coming at the upper primary level?
Well, I'm sure they are general form of education intended to expose or introduce the pupil to some, I would say, universal horizon. But at the primary, it should rather be prone down to perhaps the JHS level. But maybe the primary is being seen, primary 6, for example, is being seen as a transit point where the pupil will be introduced to several subjects, and on the basis of the performance be able to tell if he or she would fit into home science, business, or whatever indirectly, and have the preparation at the JHS level before moving to the secondary school. You know, but the current system of education is having a challenge. As we speak, you look at the Human Capital Index released by the World Bank, and it states that about 56% of Ghana's human capital will go waste in the next 18 years, thanks to our poor system of education we have now. So the system of education we have is only helping to, in a way, reduce the quality of human capital that we could have to help accelerate our national development and growth.
Doc, I'll ask you one final question on government and then go back to parents, because some parents don't know why they should invest that much in their kids' education, especially at the basic level. And at this juncture, you may join the conversation. The number to call us on is 0558 656899. You can call and then contribute to the show. So, Doc, finally, I'll ask you on government. If we pump that much, why are there schools under trees? Is it that we are not pumping enough, or the money is diverted somewhere?
I may perhaps go with the first one, based on what I have chance on. You look at the fact that initially the amount of money we allocate to the education sector does not meet the needs, the complete needs of the sector, given the fact that the national cake, has to be in a way shared in such that every sector gets a chunk of it. For this reason, it becomes difficult. But for some time now, as a nation, we've been able to take the bull by the horns and ensure that a chunk of the allocation goes especially to the education sector. And gradually, this is helping to reduce and eventually take studies or classes off the trees or under the trees as we have at the moment. And so I would say it may boil down to the insufficient allocation of funds to the education sector. That is what I would attribute to the cause of the holding organization of classes.
I remember when the former second lady went to a school, they didn't have enough chalk.
Yes.
And then she had cause to complain.
Yeah.
So something as basic as chalk, why can't it get to this? Can't we put touches over classrooms so kids don't study under trees, especially at the basic level?
That is very true. Now you look at the fact that in most cases when we come to government facilities, the facilities will require some bureaucratic process, and that is where we have a problem, we have a challenge. And at the governmental level, it may be difficult to perhaps have engineers stationed and decide to go for the thatch or mud houses as a starting point for people to learn. If the community decides to mobilize its members and then put up such structures as ad hoc or temporary learning sites, I'm sure the government can come into support. But the government herself initiating the thatch or mud houses as the starting point for learning may be difficult, because you would require bureaucratic process, allocating funds through budgets, making sure you have your engineers going to do the necessary feasibility studies, ensure that the location will not infringe on major highways, there will be access to electricity, water, all of this. You know, so it sometimes takes a little time for some of these facilities to be provided, and that is where there is a challenge. But you realize in cases where the community decides to take the initiative to put up certain temporary structures, the government does not in a way prevent the community from doing so. You help the government while putting the necessary resources together to have some amount of respite with regards to the provision of education for the people. So the government starting this might not be appropriate, because at the governmental level it must be done and done well. But the community can come in and then mitigate some of these challenges with these temporary structures, and that would help us to be able to move on a bit.
Doc, we are still discussing the cost of education, and now we will drift away from government. A mother and a father can decide we have a child, we can spend our money on something else. But they keep pumping. The woman has to look good. Instead of buying GTP or ATL, she pumps her money in there. The dad could have done other things with his money. He just keeps investing. Can you speak to the parents a bit? What is the net benefit of all the investment they do, right from lower grade up to upper grade, with emphasis on the basic education?
Thank you very much. Yes, if you look
at
the...
You are a parent yourself.
And so are you potential. And the way you are even sitting here rattling should even tell the viewer that if you decide to invest in your ward, that will not be an economic exercise in futility. It will be one that will be of fruition. Why? Simply because the ward would eventually be a person of substance. It will be a person that will be beneficial to society. And when the benefit is extended to society, you can just imagine the extent to which the benefit will even come to the home. You know, we've gotten to a stage where education is the order of the day. I was in Agogo a couple of months ago, and while walking, you know, casually, disguising oneself, and people were interacting, you heard people say in the Akan language, education now is compulsory. It is the way to go. You must make sure your ward attains the education to the highest level. Even if you as a parent wasn't privileged at the outset to access it, it is about time you do the best you can to educate your ward. We've gotten to the stage, as I mentioned, where it is becoming highly competitive, and you even get to places where you realize it is not enough to be self-explanatory, especially in the local language. Even in the English language, you need to be able to show some amount of exemplariness. If not, it may be difficult for you to make certain significant inroads. And therefore, we cannot hold back, you know, but to ensure that the wards are given the necessary form of education. It's an investment. This is the word I decided to explain prior to. It's a huge investment. If you come to the world of finance, we have the 50-30 rule, 50-30-20 rule. What it basically means is that whatever you earn, try to spend about 50% on necessities, things you need, and then 30% on things you want. It means things that are not of present. And then the 20% should go into savings. This is not a hard, nor is it a fast rule. You could change it to suit your basic needs. In some cases, the 20% savings might not be in the bank or at the bank for you. It could be added to the necessities, where the necessities you will broadly define to include your children or your wants that are under your care. If you invest in them very well, you realize at the end you will be able to derive the dividends thereof. Now, the social security that we have, if you're working formally, the deductions will come to the realization that it's not enough to take care of you at old age. You need extra funds. The extra funds could come in the form of how well you take care of your child, so that when you are old and you can no longer move, you have someone who could come, who could call and provide for your needs. I have also realized that thoughts, psychological stress and thinking are able to kill people faster. But if you are psychologically conditioned, you are not too affluent, but you have your peace of mind, it helps you to live longer. And therefore, if you invest in your children and at old age, you have people who can be meeting your basic needs, it will help extend your life on this earth, than, visit the grave very early. So we should learn to invest in our ward so that when we can no longer move, and that is an inadvertent truth, because we do not own the world, we live in it. It belongs to someone, and at a point in time you would not be strong to be able to move about, but your investment will do the work and talk for you.
Okay,
so it's
so
about
the cake
time.
should be our cocoa farm, you would say.
Absolutely, it should be our cocoa, it should be our gold, it should be our crude oil now, and we have no choice than to make them one of the three precious qualities I've just mentioned. If you do that, with due diligence and with God's intervention, you realize your investment will not be in vain. Some people will be sitting back home now, perhaps will be saying, I've invested so much in my son and my daughter, he or she tried as I did, he or she is still going wayward. It will be perhaps one out of several cases, and in some cases it is not enough to only invest in the ward. You require some spiritual backing. Not negatively, I'm talking about prayer, so that the good Lord will guide the child and to bring him or her up in the way that you would aspire the child to be. I realize that we are just caretakers. The children belong to God, but we are caretakers on behalf of God, and therefore we need to inquire from him to help us bring them up in the way that would meet his expectation.
Thank you so much, Doug. We go for our final commercial break. When we come back, Habina reads your messages. Do stick and stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Abodie mu no wonim sɛ onyankopɔn ɛwɔ adoma a ɔde dom ɔman biara saa akyɛdeɛ ɛyɛ nneɛma a ɛboa ma nipa nya ahotɔ ɛwɔ ne daadaa asetena mu nsuo mframa yɛaduane yɛnua kwayɛ nhahama ɛne nnuro ahodoɔ mpo yɛamammerɛ ɛne yɛamanneɛ saa nneɛma ɛyɛ nneɛma a nyankopɔn de bɔ ɔman biara sɛdeɛ mbɛma emu nipa no anya ahotɔ enti na Kantanka television ahyehyɛ dwumadie sonko a yɛato no din sɛ yɛdiem ɛwɔ yɛdiem dwumadie so no na yɛkɔ Ghana mmea nyinaa ne yɛkɔ akɔfa nneɛma ahodoɔ a onyankopɔn de adom yɛn ɛne mfasoɔ a yɛnya no wɔ so saa nso ne yɛbɛhwɛ ahobammɔ sonko a yɛde bɛba saa nneɛma yi yɛtumi ahwɛ so ye ɛde agya hɔ ɛde ama nkyirima sɛ meka yɛdiem a na wagye so sɛ papapaa yɛdiem papapaa
Made in Ghana, yɛdiem. Ɔmɛ yɛdwagye yɛn yɛma wo.
Yɛdiem no made in Ghana.
Yɛdiem made in Ghana.
You're welcome back. Abena, welcome. What do you have for us by way of messages?
Okay, I've received excellent messages. Someone says, I suggest the government invest more in education. This one is sent from Techiman by Mr. Bafo. And then the next one says, this is a very good topic of discussion. I pray the education authorities give the good ears to listen to change. This one was sent by Ibrahim from Tolun. And then the next one says, our educational pendulum seems to have swung towards the secondary education, neglecting the very foundation of the system, thus basic education. This is pathetic. Robin Peter to pay Paul. Sent in, this is sent from Insuta Kwame. And the next one says, please, it is important to really review number of subjects for people because it's very sad our children are not given good foundation. Nana Techi sent in this one from Brekum. And then our last one says, I suggest it should be free instead of SHS because I think that we can grow our economy. I think that can grow our economy faster. But I would also like to find out from the guest if I am right per the background. So
okay. So Abena, you stick around, and Doc will tackle some of those concerns. And Doc, first of all, people think we can do better in terms of investing in education. What would be your recommendations?
Yes, it is. If you talk about the fact that we still have schools under trees, then you realize we have some amount of way to go. And that is not a hidden fact. It is a known fact. And that is why every year the allocation to the education sector in general is reviewed upwardly to make sure that it meets the needs of the people. And the investment we require there, as a matter of fact, is long overdue. And I'm sure the education sector would also witness some changes to help us take our enviable position when it comes to the international achievement with regards to the level of education. So yes, there is any dispute about the fact that the amount of money or resources we inject into our education requires an upward review.
Would you say that the money we borrow, and then use as subvention for higher education, a chunk of it should be pumped, because you made a good point that if the foundation is not solid, neither the middle nor the top end will be strong. And so do you want to see more money being pumped there? Because it's a shame that in the 21st century, a country would have basic schools under trees.
That is very true, and that is where we still have a challenge. You look at the fact that in time past, you realize there have been some, I would say, equitable distribution of the resources across the various levels of our education. But not equitable. I'm sure some people watching technical and vocational education and training, this particular sector has suffered a setback in time past. It is last year that the government decided to increase the allocation of Ghana Education Service to the technical and vocational education and training in the country, and therefore there is some amount of diversified allocation of funds. That is true. The primary level requires major attention, perhaps than we are giving it now, with regards to the provision of facilities and also the teachers. I'm saying this because if you look at the urban areas and peri-urban areas, you say we don't have much of a challenge. But if you go into the hinterlands, you could attest to the fact that we have challenges with regards to the primary form of education. So yes, we need to invest more at the primary level to create the enabling environment, to create the conducive atmosphere, to create the sense of belonging and enthusiasm, to make way for the other levels of education, and then make them easier for us to.
Abena also read a text message about the need to go heavy on technical education. From primaries 1 to 6, what are the basic tools we can introduce to the kids? Or is just the usual memorization and the regurgitation of what you are taught?
Thank you very much. You realize at the primary level, fortunately for us, we have the art and craft.
Art and craft,
yes,
at the basic level.
Yes, you look at the lower primaries, I'm sure most of them have the art and craft introduced. And so this is in a way intended to test.
Is that different from pre-tech in our time? We used to do pre-tech with a drawing board and a T-square. I don't know whether it's still there.
You know, and well, the old system, it was called technical drawing directly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know which one, but...
So at what level do they incrementally introduce the children at the basic level to technical education?
Most especially at the junior high school level, and go and forward.
Okay.
And so at the primary level, from lower primary to upper, you are introduced to the arts and crafts. So at this level, this is introduced, a lighter one, to test the students' appreciation and level of understanding with regards to the art and crafts, and how to use the hands in invention. So by the time the pupil gets to the junior high school level, you would be perhaps in a pole position to tell the direction that he or she is going. Some people may be more talented, you know, when it comes to art and craft, but
Doc,
not academically.
Unfortunately, time is not a good friend. In a minute, and I believe that is quite difficult considering how prolific you are. What would be enclosed in your recommendations
yes,
in terms of how much we should spend on basic education as a country?
Well, for the basic education, well, we're limiting it to basic education, not the junior and the form in general. The basic form of education, whether we review the current system of education to the old system or new, the basic form of education will still remain with us. You know, because that is the basic. That is the first step towards the other steps. And therefore, we need to pay particular attention to this particular level. I would suggest we increase the level of facilities we have and the number of facilities as well as teachers we have, so that the products from this particular level going to the next and subsequent levels will be people who will be able to meet the academic test of time. We should be able to do this so that we can effectively lift ourselves up the ranking. You look at the Human Capital Index, as I mentioned, released by the World Bank. Ghana ranked 116th out of 157 countries. And it states that in the next 18 years, we would only be able to count on 44% of the human capital that will be produced. 56% will go waste. And I don't think there's something we would like to hold on to. The primary is basic, and it will help any form of education system we want to pursue in the country.
Thank you so much, Doc. Sorry we didn't have too much time. You would have fed us some more knowledge. And thank you so much, Abinasra, for reading the messages. This is all time will permit us on our discussion, the cost of basic education, with Dr. Ebenezer Ashley, a financial analyst and also an economist. Doc, thank you so much for making time.
Thanks for having me.
Till we make your way, come over your way on Wednesday, do keep watching for Dakar TV. Stay blessed.